Definitions. An experiment is a situation involving a chance or probability that leads to the results called outcomes. An example would be the spinner that we discussed previously. The experiment is actually spinning the spinner. Outcome is the result of a single trial of an experiment. The possible outcomes in the case of our spinner are landing on yellow, blue, green, or red. Sample space. The sample space is the list of all possible outcomes. The notation we use to identify the sample space is the Greek symbol omega. In the case of our spinner example, omega was yellow, blue, green, and red, the four colors. We're eventually going to start talking about Venn diagrams, and in the case of a Venn diagram, the omega is everything that fits within the space that's defined. So typically we just indicate this as the omega. And that's what that black box around the shape is denoting. Everything inside the box is the sample space. An experiment is random if the outcome depends on chance. In other words, the outcome can't be predicted with absolute certainty, and we can list the sample space before the experiment. Going back to the spinner example, it's a random experiment because we can't predict the outcome with certainty, but we know the sample space. We know that there is red, yellow, green, and blue. An event is one or more outcomes of an experiment. This is also known as a subset of the sample space. One event of this experiment would be landing on blue. A simple event has only one outcome. If the spinner was all blue, then there's only one outcome that can happen. You don't encounter this very often. Probability is the measure of how likely an event is. The probability of landing on blue in our spinner example is 1 in 4. The theoretical probability of an event is a number that quantifies the possibility that the event will occur. It's determined by mathematical reasoning. So the theoretical probability is equal to the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes. So again, going back to our spinner example, the theoretical probability of landing on green can be calculated as 1 in 4 because there's one green segment and it's equal to 1/4 of all the spinning space. If we asked what's the theoretical probability of landing on green or blue, then there are two segments that give us a possible solution, so then it would be 2 out of 4. The experimental probability of an event is determined from the experiment itself. So the experimental probability is the number of times an outcome actually occurs divided by the number of trials that were done. If we spun the spinner 10 times and landed on green 3 times, red 2 times, blue 2 times, and yellow 3 times, the experimental probability of landing on green is 3 out of 10. You'll notice that's different from the theoretical probability, which we calculated to be 1 out of 4. The subjective probability that an event will occur relies on judgment or perceptiveness of a person who has a particular set of information about the situation. An example of subjective probability is predicting the weather. So somebody might say there is a 60% chance of rain tomorrow. That's based on some complex modeling, and the modeling is built on the knowledge or some special information that that person has. Add this to your memory aid. Try the practice questions in the workbook and check your answers against the answer key.